The space station hung in the quiet emptiness of the galaxy, glowing softly against the darkness. Inside, the hum of machines mixed with the chatter of aliens and humans moving through corridors. In the crowded dining hall, trays clanged, voices shouted, and smells of strange foods filled the air. Liru, a small alien boy, stood at the edge of the hall, staring at the food trays with hungry eyes. His stomach growled loudly, but he had no credits left to buy even the smallest portion. Other alien children noticed him immediately. They had plump bodies and confident smiles, their trays full of bright, steaming food. "Look at him," one snickered. "The little worm is still hungry even here." Liru lowered his head, trying to shrink into himself. He wished he could disappear. Laughter spread across the hall. Some children pointed, some whispered, and some openly mocked him. "Does he even know how to eat?" another taunted. "Maybe his stomach is broken." The words cut sharper than any knife. Liru's ears twitched, his eyes watering, but he refused to cry. He had learned long ago that crying made it worse. From a nearby table, a human boy watched. His name was Eli. He had short, messy hair, and his hands rested calmly on the edge of his tray. He saw Liru standing there, small and trembling, while others laughed. Eli's heart tightened. Humans were different from aliens in many ways, but cruelty was never one of them. He hated seeing anyone suffer, even a stranger. The alien children noticed Eli looking at them. Some turned their heads and whispered to each other, curious about the human who dared to watch quietly instead of joining in. Eli didn't flinch. His gaze stayed on Liru, who looked more like a tiny bird than a boy. The laughter continued, but it began to feel awkward under Eli's steady watch. Liru took a careful step back, hoping no one would notice him leaving. He wanted to get away from the laughter, away from the smells that made his stomach ache. But there was nowhere to hide. The hall was crowded, and every step seemed to draw more attention. One child, taller and stronger, pushed Liru lightly. "Hey worm, you better run. Don't you want some food?" Liru blinked and looked up, seeing the smirk on the boy's face. His stomach twisted painfully. Eli finally stood. He walked slowly, deliberately toward Liru. The alien stared, puzzled. Why would a human leave his seat? Eli didn't speak at first. He simply held out a hand, motioning Liru to come closer. The small alien hesitated, glancing at the laughing group. They sneered, daring him to make a move. But hunger was stronger than fear. Liru edged forward, his small legs trembling. The laughter stopped suddenly. The alien children froze, unsure what would happen. A human rarely intervened. Most simply watched or left. Eli reached the tray and pointed to the food. "Here," he said softly. "Take some." Liru's eyes widened. He shook his head, thinking he must have misunderstood. I can't," he whispered. "It's yours." Eli shook his head gently. "I'm full. You need it more than I do." The words were simple, but the meaning was heavy. Liru felt a warmth in his chest, a strange, almost magical feeling he had never experienced before. No one had ever offered him anything without expecting something in return. Not family, not friends, not even strangers. The alien children stared, mouths open, unable to believe what they were seeing. The small human, barely older than a child, had given his food to a boy they had laughed at. Some began to feel a twinge of shame. Others were too surprised to speak. Liru, trembling, reached for the food. He didn't take it quickly. He looked at Eli with wide eyes, unsure if this was a trick. But Eli just smiled, patient and kind, waiting for him to accept. When Liru finally picked up a piece of the food, the warmth of it felt like more than just nourishment. It was hope. It was kindness. It was the first moment in a long time that he felt seen. The laughter of the alien children faded into silence, replaced by whispers of confusion. How could a human be so generous? How could someone care so much? Liru ate slowly, savoring every bite. Eli stayed beside him, calm and quiet, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But something had changed in the hall. The other children no longer laughed. They watched, uncertain, wondering if maybe humans were different from what they had believed. Not weaker, not strange, but stronger in ways they didn't understand. That day, Liru learned that kindness could be braver than strength. And Eli, the quiet human boy, proved that a simple act of sharing could silence mockery and plant the first seeds of respect in the hearts of those who had laughed. The small boy ate, the human smiled, and the crowded hall felt just a little brighter. A tiny victory had been won, not with power but with a single, simple choice: to care for someone else. The next day, the station's dining hall buzzed louder than usual. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved between tables, carrying trays heavy with colorful foods that steamed and smelled strange but delicious. Liru entered cautiously, holding a small coin tightly in his hand. He had saved it all week, hoping it would be enough to buy just a tiny portion of food. His stomach twisted with both hunger and anxiety. The alien children who had mocked him yesterday noticed him immediately. "Look, it's the little worm again," one sneered, nudging a friend. "Does he really think he can eat like us?" Liru lowered his head, ignoring them, but their laughter followed him like a shadow. He reached the food counter, his hands shaking as he tried to count the coins. From across the hall, Eli watched quietly. He noticed the same fear and hesitation in Liru's movements that he had seen the day before. Eli's own tray was full, untouched, and his stomach felt comfortable, not empty. He didn't like seeing anyone struggle. Humans, he thought, had a strange kind of strength. It was not about muscles or speed but about caring. Liru finally managed to buy a small portion, barely enough to fill his stomach. As he turned to leave, a tall alien boy stepped in front of him, blocking his way. "Is that all?" the boy laughed. "You call that food? Maybe humans like you will just starve." The other children snickered, their eyes full of cruel curiosity. Liru's cheeks burned with shame. He wanted to disappear again, but he held his head high. Eli stood slowly, placing his tray carefully on the table. The aliens noticed him moving toward Liru. "What is he doing now?" one whispered. "Does he really care about the worm?" The children whispered to each other, intrigued but skeptical. They had never seen a human act this way. Eli reached Liru's side and knelt down to his level. "Hey," he said softly. "You don't have to eat that small portion alone." Liru's eyes widened. I can't." "It's yours," he stammered, glancing nervously at the other children. Eli shook his head gently. "I have plenty," he said, pointing to his untouched tray. "Take some. I'm full." The other alien children froze. Some stared in disbelief. Some whispered to each other, trying to understand what they had just heard. One tall boy laughed nervously, thinking it must be a trick. "What? You mean he's actually giving it to him?" Another nodded slowly, still unsure. Humans were strange, yes, but no one expected them to be so generous. Liru hesitated. He had never experienced this before. Food had always come with conditions: work, obedience, or payment. But this human boy was simply offering it. Slowly, trembling, Liru reached for the tray. His small hands hovered over the colorful food, afraid it might vanish. Eli smiled at him, patient and calm, giving him all the time he needed. When Liru finally picked up a piece and tasted it, warmth spread through his body. Not just from the food but from the simple act of kindness. He looked at Eli, his eyes full of surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. Eli nodded. "You're welcome," he said. You need it more than I do." The laughter from the other children had stopped completely. They watched, uncertain and quiet. This small human boy had done something none of them expected. He had not fought, he had not shouted, and he had not humiliated anyone. He had only shared. And that sharing carried more power than anything the aliens had seen before. Liru ate slowly, savoring every bite. For the first time he felt that someone saw him as more than just a weak, hungry boy. He felt respected. He felt safe. He felt important. The other children looked at him differently now, some with shame, some with curiosity, and some with a strange kind of respect they didn't fully understand yet. Eli stayed beside him until Liru finished, talking quietly about small things, about the station, about the food, and even about the funny noises some aliens made while eating. Liru laughed softly for the first time in days. The moment felt simple, yet it changed the hall in a way that no one could ignore. By the end of the meal, Liru's stomach was full and his heart felt lighter. Eli's small act had created a quiet shift in the atmosphere. The alien children no longer saw Liru as weak. They saw him as someone worthy of attention, and perhaps even someone worth protecting. And they began to understand something new about humans. Their strength was not in fighting or showing off. It was in caring, in giving, and in standing up for what was right even when it seemed small. As Liru left the hall, Eli called out softly, "See you tomorrow?" Liru nodded, smiling shyly. Something inside him had changed. He knew the world would never feel quite the same. A simple act of kindness had shown him that humans could be heroes in ways no one ever expected. And in the quiet hum of the space station, a small lesson spread among the children, unseen but felt. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is share. The day after Eli shared his meal with Liru, whispers spread quickly through the station. The alien children who had mocked Liru were confused. They couldn't stop thinking about the small human boy who had given away his food so easily. Some of them were impressed, while others felt a strange sting of shame. They decided to test him. At the training deck, a group of aliens gathered. They were stronger and older than Eli, and they wanted to see if humans were really as weak as they seemed. "Let's see if he can handle something difficult," one said. "If he fails, we'll know he's just lucky with words and food." Eli approached calmly, his hands behind his back, not showing any fear. The first test was a physical one. A climbing wall stretched high above the deck with moving platforms and shifting grips. Liru watched nervously from the side. The alien children whispered, "There's no way he can reach the top." Eli looked at the wall and then at the platforms. He didn't hesitate. With steady hands and careful steps, he began climbing. The aliens tried to distract him, tossing small objects and shouting to make him lose focus. But Eli stayed calm. He thought carefully about each movement, using his mind as much as his strength. Step by step he reached the top. Some alien children gasped. Others looked embarrassed that they had doubted him. Liru clapped quietly, smiling with pride. Next was a mental challenge. The aliens brought him a puzzle box with strange symbols that no human had ever seen. The box was designed to be almost impossible, with hidden locks and confusing patterns. Eli studied it slowly, turning it in his hands, examining every line and symbol. He tried one combination then another until he finally heard a soft click. The box opened. Inside was a small prize but more importantly respect. The alien children murmured among themselves. "He's clever," one said, shaking his head. "No human should be able to do that." Another whispered, "Maybe they are not weak at all." Eli didn't celebrate. He simply returned the box and smiled at Liru, who was watching wide-eyed. Finally, the aliens tried a test of kindness and leadership. They split the children into groups and asked each group to solve a problem, how to share a small amount of food among everyone fairly. Eli joined the group with Liru. While some aliens argued and shouted, Eli suggested a simple plan: divide the food into small portions first, then let anyone who was still hungry ask for a little more from the ones who had more. At first, the alien children resisted. They were not used to sharing. But slowly they followed Eli's instructions. He guided them gently, explaining why fairness mattered and showing patience when they complained. By the end, every child had enough to eat. Liru looked at Eli with admiration. You make it easy," he said quietly. "Even when it seems hard, you make it simple." The aliens watching began to understand something new. Strength was not only about muscles. Cleverness was not only about solving puzzles. And leadership was not only about giving orders. Humans like Eli had a different kind of strength. One that came from patience, kindness, and thinking ahead. One tall alien boy stepped forward, his usual arrogance gone. "Maybe humans are not weak," he admitted reluctantly. "They just act differently." Another nodded, still unsure. "Yes, different but strong in ways we didn't expect." Liru felt a small spark of pride. He had known something special about humans and now the others were starting to see it too. Eli didn't boast or gloat. He simply smiled and stayed calm. That was part of his strength, the quiet confidence that came from knowing he could help without showing off. Liru realized that humans could inspire respect not by fighting or mocking, but by simply being themselves. By the end of the day, the aliens who had doubted humans the most were quietly talking among themselves. They were curious now, wondering how someone so small and gentle could solve puzzles, climb walls, and lead without anger. Liru followed Eli, learning as he went, noticing how calm he stayed even when challenges seemed impossible. That night, in the small quarters they shared, Liru thought about the day. He remembered the fear he had felt in the dining hall and the doubt in the training deck. And he realized that humans were not like the aliens he knew. Humans had a strange, quiet power, one that could change minds without shouting, one that could make people listen without threatening, and one that could teach respect without force. Eli looked at Liru and smiled. "Tomorrow is another day," he said softly. "And we'll face it together." Liru nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. He knew that the challenge was not over. The alien children would continue to test him and others might laugh again. But now he had seen what humans could do. And he knew that, in the end, kindness and courage could be stronger than mockery or fear. And so, under the quiet hum of the space station, a new understanding began to grow. Liru and the other alien children were learning that strength could take many forms. And the human boy who gave away his meal had shown them the first glimpse of a different kind of power, one that came from heart, mind, and a quiet courage that no laughter could break. The space station had grown quieter in some ways, but a new tension had settled over it. Supplies had arrived late and the food stores were running low. Alien children whispered nervously, worried they would go hungry again. Liru felt his stomach tighten. He remembered yesterday when Eli had helped him, and he wished that same kindness could stretch to everyone. In the dining hall, the alien children began to jostle each other as small trays were handed out. The older ones grabbed more than their share, leaving little for the younger or smaller children. Liru clutched his tray, feeling frustration and hunger mix in a sharp knot. He looked around, wishing he could do something, but he was small and unsure. Eli noticed immediately. He had already eaten, but he had stayed close to the hall, watching how the food was being shared. When he saw the disorder, he didn't panic. Humans, he thought, had a strange strength, the ability to act calmly when others could not. He moved toward Liru and whispered, "We can fix this. Come with me." Together they approached the other children. Eli spoke quietly but clearly, suggesting a plan. "First, everyone gets a small portion. Then if anyone is still hungry, we will share what is left." Some aliens muttered and argued. "Why should we take less?" one demanded. "We are stronger. We deserve more," another said. Eli smiled patiently. "If everyone has enough, no one will be weak. We all get through this together." At first, the alien children resisted. They were used to thinking only of themselves, to grabbing more than they needed. But Liru, inspired by Eli, began helping. He guided smaller children to their portions, explaining how the human boy had helped him yesterday. Slowly, curiosity and respect began to replace the anger and fear. Eli watched, giving small instructions, encouraging cooperation. He did not shout or demand obedience. He simply showed the children a way to work together. Step by step, the plan took shape. Portions were divided fairly. Smaller children received extra from those who had more. Liru passed trays, smiling as he helped younger ones. For the first time, many alien children felt what it was like to care for others instead of mocking them. When the last tray was handed out, the hall was quiet but filled with a strange warmth. No one was starving. Liru's stomach was full, but his heart felt fuller. The other children looked at him and then at Eli, their eyes wide with surprise. They had never seen such calm authority paired with kindness. The tall aliens who had mocked him before now nodded slightly, unsure of what to say but feeling a deep respect. Eli knelt beside Liru, placing a hand on his shoulder. "See," he said softly. "It's not just about taking what you want. It's about helping others. Everyone can do it if they try." Liru's eyes shone. He had learned more than how to eat fairly. He had learned how to lead without fear, how to make others listen without force. Some of the alien children began speaking quietly among themselves. "Humans, they don't need to fight to be strong," one whispered. "They just think differently," said another. Liru nodded slowly. He realized that kindness could be stronger than power, and patience could be stronger than anger. The simple act of helping others had turned the hall from chaos into order, from mockery into respect. As the day went on, the news of Eli's actions spread across the station. Aliens who had doubted humans began watching them differently. They saw humans as calm, clever, and brave, not because of strength or weapons but because of their actions. Liru walked among them proudly, helping younger children, teaching them what Eli had taught him. That evening, Liru found a quiet corner and thought about the day. Hunger had tested everyone, but it had also created an opportunity. He realized that humans like Eli were rare but powerful in a different way. They inspired others, solved problems calmly, and acted with courage and kindness when it mattered most. Eli joined him, smiling softly. "You did well today," he said. "You helped others and that made a difference." Liru blushed. "I just followed your example," he admitted. Eli shook his head. "No, you learned it and now you can teach others. That is the real power." For the first time, Liru felt like he belonged. He was not just the small alien who had been laughed at. He was a helper, a guide, and a friend. And the human boy beside him had shown him that courage was not only about facing danger, it was about standing up for what was right, even when it seemed impossible. As the station lights dimmed for the night, the children rested with full stomachs and new understanding. Liru knew the challenges were not over. There would be other hungry moments, other doubts, and other tests. But he also knew that kindness, patience, and clever thinking could change hearts. Humans like Eli had proven it. And so, in the quiet glow of the station, a turning point had come, not with force or shouting but with calm, careful leadership. The alien children had learned a lesson they would not forget, that sometimes the bravest and strongest act is simply to care for others. Days passed on the station, and a quiet change settled over the children. The aliens who had laughed at Liru no longer mocked him. They watched him with curiosity and a growing respect. Liru walked taller now, not because he was stronger but because he had learned what courage and kindness could do. And Eli, the human boy who had shared his food, remained at his side, calm and patient as always. The next meal arrived and the dining hall hummed with anticipation. Aliens lined up, unsure how to behave. Would they hoard food like before or would they follow the example Eli had shown? Liru stepped forward, guiding the younger children, helping them divide portions fairly. Eli stood quietly, smiling, letting the children take the lead while offering gentle advice when needed. The alien children began to share without prompting. Smaller children received help from the bigger ones and no one went hungry. Some of the older children even smiled at Liru, a quiet acknowledgement of his efforts. Liru realized that the lesson Eli had taught him, about kindness, courage and fairness, was spreading. Humans did not need to fight or shout to lead. Their quiet actions could change hearts. Later, in the recreation deck, some of the aliens challenged Eli again. They offered him strange games, puzzles and small trials. But Eli did not compete to show off. Instead, he helped everyone play together, explaining rules clearly, showing patience when others struggled, and celebrating successes with gentle encouragement. Slowly, the aliens understood that strength could be measured in ways other than physical power. Liru watched inspired. He had learned that humans could influence others not with fear but with care. He began helping Eli guide the younger children, showing them fairness and cooperation. The alien children listened, first reluctantly, then eagerly as they saw how well the humans treated everyone. A quiet respect grew, replacing the laughter and mockery of the past. Even the adults on the station noticed the change. They saw the younger aliens working together, helping each other and listening to the humans' calm leadership. The humans had done something unexpected. They had made cooperation and kindness feel natural. No one had commanded respect. It had come from simple acts, from quiet patience, and from the human example. One afternoon, Liru found Eli near the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The boy pointed to a small planet below, glowing softly. One day, Eli said, "We could share food and help even more. Not just here but everywhere. That is how humans make a difference." Liru nodded, feeling a warm pride in his chest. He realized that this was bigger than one meal or one haul. Humans could change the world quietly without needing war or power. The alien children had started visiting Liru and Eli in small groups, asking questions, wanting to learn more. They asked about human food, human games, and how humans thought about helping others. Liru answered with what he had learned from Eli, sharing the lessons of patience, sharing, and courage. The aliens began to imitate these behaviors, helping each other without being told, learning that respect and kindness were more powerful than mockery or fear. The transformation on the station became a quiet legend among the children. Stories of the human boy who gave his meal to a hungry alien spread slowly, inspiring new generations to act with care and courage. Liru remembered the fear he had felt at the first meal, the shame of being mocked, and the hope Eli had given him. He understood now that humans had a rare kind of power, the power to teach, to inspire, and to lead without domination. In the weeks that followed, the station became a calmer, kinder place. Hunger still came, challenges still appeared, but the children faced them together. Liru and Eli had shown that one small act, sharing food, could grow into something much greater. It was a lesson in patience, generosity, and quiet courage. On the observation deck one evening, Liru looked out at the stars, thinking about the galaxy beyond the station. "Humans really are different," he said softly. Eli smiled, brushing his hand across the railing. "Not different in a strange way," he replied. "Different in a good way. And anyone can be like that if they try." Liru nodded, understanding that this was the real triumph. No wars had been fought. No weapons had been used. But a quiet victory had been won. Humans had shown the aliens that courage could be gentle, that strength could be kindness, and that helping others was the greatest power of all. The galaxy had begun to change, not through fear or force, but through quiet acts of generosity and heart. As night fell over the station, the children laughed together, sharing small meals, helping each other, and telling stories of the human boy who had once said, "Take mine, I'm full." It was a lesson that would last far longer than any battle. It was a reminder that true heroes sometimes act quietly, simply by caring for someone else. And in that small corner of the galaxy, humanity's quiet triumph shone brighter than any star.